Okay, I guess you can hear me now. Okay. Okay, good day to you. And so today we're going to be looking at unit two. Please, can you see my screen? Okay, so today we're going to be looking at module two. And module two addresses module two addresses general requirement. Okay. So my name is Dr. Aliu, and welcome to today's session. And I hope we'll be able to have a better understanding from what we started on during the module one that talks about introduction to ISO 15189 2022. So today we're going to be looking at module two, which is ISO 15189 document that was shared with us. Please do well to do that so that you begin to understand what we are actually looking at. And I said earlier, it is expected that you would have a background knowledge on quality management system to be able to effectively understand the implementation of ISO 15189 2022. However, if you don't have that, we'll do as much as possible to carry everyone along so that we have an understanding of what we are doing. Remember that it's also a platform for us to share our knowledge, and some of us have implemented this program already. It's worthy to note that by December, completed from ISO 15189 2012 to 2022 for those who have ISO 15189 2012 initially up and running in the organization. So please, so this course, this learning is very, very important for every one of us as we share and learn together. So now, during the introduction, we talk about that the ISO 15189 is a medical laboratory requirement seen in the lab. So this is the fourth edition, which cancel or replace the third edition, which cancel or replace the third edition. So the fourth edition cancels and replaces the third edition, which is ISO 15189 2012, which has been technically revised. It also replaces the ISO 22870 2016 for point of care testing. So ISO 15189 2022 is a review of ISO 15189 2012 and also replacement of ISO 2280 2016 for point of care testing. So the main changes are as follows. One, it aligned with the ISO 17025 2017, resulted in the management requirement now appearing at the end of this document. Now, the requirement for point of care testing, POCT, previously in the ISO 22870 have now been incorporated into this document, which is ISO 15189 2022. It is also worthy of note that there's also an emphasis on risk management in ISO 15189 2022. So the first version of this ISO, that was the first edition. Second edition was in 2007. Third edition 2012. So this is the fourth edition of the ISO 15189 document, which is ISO 15189 2022. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Please, if you can hear me loud and clear, you can type on the comment section. I can hear you loud and clear. This is expected that every one of us participate your mics for those of us who are listening. Okay. So this is the ISO 15119 2022 overview. If you have gone through the document I sent to you, you will see this. We have the forward, we have the introduction, we have one that talks about the scope, two talks about the normative references, three talks about the terms and the definitions. Number four talks about the general requirements. So please take your time to read the normative references, take your time to read the terms and definitions, all the terms and definitions that is used, just like you writing a project or a paper. You have terms and you have definitions. So take your time to go through that document and read the terms and definition. Now, in the school of learning, um, what is written or what you know how to read and you don't read, you don't have advantage over someone who does not read or who cannot read. So if you can read and you don't read, you don't have advantage over someone who cannot read. So it is expected that when a document, SOPs, anything that is passed across to an organization, take your time to read. That's in reading, that's when you get an understanding. So please go to that document this week and read the scope, the normative reference, the terms and definition. So we're going to be starting from the general requirement, which is the first requirement in the ISO 15189 2022. So 4 talks about general requirement, 5 talks about structure and governance requirement, 6 talks about resource requirement, 7 talks about process requirement, 8 talks about management system requirement, and we have an additional requirement for point of care testing. So you remember in the pre-test, we asked how many requirements is in the ISO 15189 2022. So can someone answer that question now with what we just explained? We have general requirements, we have structure and governance requirement, we have resource requirement, we have process requirement, we have management system requirement, and we have an additional requirement for point of care testing. So how many requirements is in the ISO 15189 2022? Okay, someone says 5. Someone says 6. Okay. More suggestion. How many? How many is the requirement? This is okay. Someone is saying 5. Someone is saying 6. Okay. So why 5? Look at it now. I'm showing you live on the screen. The requirement. The requirement is there. So once someone say 8. Wow. Okay. This is becoming interesting. So how many requirements? So please type. Everyone, you can type on the comment section. How many requirements do we have there? Okay. Someone said 6. Gold 6. Okay. Quintola 6. Yes. Okay. Someone say POCT makes it 6. Okay. So the additional requirement 6. Okay. Yeah, 6. Okay. So thank you. There are basically 5 requirements with an additional 6. So we can conveniently say 6 requirements because the POCT is also what? A requirement. Two of us. True. It's a requirement. Look, it's well spelled there. Requirement. Just like you for saying that, for example, somebody study medical laboratory science and say medical person, but you see the name medical is attached to his name. See requirement is attached to it. So that, so we have general requirements, management system requirement, and the additional requirement, which is the point of care testing. So the Annex B talks about comparison between the ISO 900 2015 and the ISO 15189 2022 document. while the Annex C, which is informative, talks about the comparison between the ISO 15189-2012 and the ISO 15189-2022. If you look at this carefully, you see that the ISO 15189-2012 has two major requirements, 24 in total, two major requirements, the management requirement and the technical requirement. But now this requirement has been broken down to general requirements, structure and governance requirements. Yes, it's applicable if you manage a POCT, yes, but it's part of the ISO 15189-2022 requirement. I'm not asking you what is the requirement for your lab. I'm asking how many requirement is in the ISO 15189-2022. That's the question. I believe all of us have gotten that answer now. Okay, next slide. So now this is the overview which we have looked at for 2012. So for 2012, we have the forward introduction. One is the scope, two reference, three terms and definition, four management requirement, five technical requirements. So in the ISO 151 2012, we have two requirements, the management requirement and the technical requirement. Now, the ISO 15189 There's a 15189-2012. Please listen to me carefully, please, and mute your mic. But there's a 15189-2012. We have the management requirement, which has these 14 requirements: organization and management responsibility, quality management systems, service agreement, examination by referral labs, external service and supplies, advisory services, resolution of complaints, identification and control of non-conformities. We have corrective actions, preventive actions, continual improvement, control of records, evaluation and audit. While 14, we have management review. Now, please, this is ISO 151-2012. I'm trying to build on something. Please just follow. While for the technical requirement, there we normally have personnel, accommodation and environmental condition. We have laboratory equipment, reagent and consumable, pre-examination and process examination process, ensuring quality of examination result, post-examination processes. We have reporting of result, release of result, and laboratory information management system. So in the previous ISO or in the previous SIPTA checklist or in the previous audit checklist, anytime you see a 5-point non-conformity that is attached to a 5-point, or any requirement that is attached to a 5-point, it shows that it's a technical requirement. True or false? True. Now, anytime you see a 4-point, it shows that it's a management requirement. So if it is 4.9 in the previous ISO, what requirement is it addressing? Type on the comment section. What requirement do you think is addressing? If you
Corrective action.
Yes, corrective actions. Yes, so that's the way it works. So now, if in the ISO 15119-2022, the ISO 15119-2022, ISO 15119-2022, when you see a 4-point requirement, it's addressing what? What is it addressing? When you see a 4-point requirement, 4-point something, what is that requirement addressing?
General requirement.
General requirement. So that's the way it works. So anytime you see a 5-point, is now showing structure and governance requirements. 6-point is resource requirement, process requirement, and so that's the way the ISO 15119-2022 works. So let's continue quickly. So by way of introduction, the objective of this document is to promote the welfare of patients and satisfaction of the laboratory user through confidence in the quality and the competency of the medical laboratory. That's the objective of this document, the ISO 15119-2022. Now, the medical laboratory is essential to patient care. All its activities from the pre-analytical to the post-analytical should be provided within an ethical and a governance framework that recognize the obligation, the responsibility of the healthcare provider to the patient. These activities are undertaken in a way it should meet all the patients and the personnel responsible for the care of those patients. So in other words, the essence of the medical laboratory service is to have a framework that make the healthcare provider responsible to the patient by doing the process in a way, in a timely manner that ensure that the patient is being satisfied. So the whole essence of this document is for who? Type on the comment section. The whole essence of this document is for who? And it's for what? The whole essence of this document is for the patient, and the whole essence of this document is for patient what? Satisfaction. Now, this document contains requirements for medical laboratory to plan and implement actions to address risk and opportunities for improvement. Benefit of this approach include increasing the effectiveness of the management system, decreasing the probability of invalid result or erroneous result, and reducing potential harm to both patient, laboratory personnel, the public, and the environment. Now, the requirements for risk management are aligned with the principle of the ISO 22367. The requirement for laboratory safety are aligned with the principle of what? ISO 15190. So, if you don't know now that safety, the ISO for safety standard is ISO 15190. I hope we all know that. So all these different aspects has their own ISO standard. So the requirement for sample collection and transportation, which is ISO 20658, this document also align with it. The document contains the requirement for point of care testing and supersede the ISO 22870. The format of this document is based on what? The ISO 17025 2017. Now, also by way of introduction, this document is intended for the use to have the currently recognized medical laboratory discipline, whether it is hematology, whether it is ChemPath, whether it is histology, whether it is microbiology, serology, whatever department you categorize it, this document covers the work frame. Now, so it is recognized. So whether you're in Germany, whether you're in Nigeria, whether you're in the UK, whether you're in the US, whether you're even in a remote part of the world, this is the internationally recognized standard. So one of the benefits of this is that if you can understand this document and you practice it, you can't find difficulty in practicing medical laboratory profession across anywhere you find yourself. It's the same standard. So there's no African standard, there's no Europe standard, and there's no Asian standard. This is the internationally recognized word standard. Now, this document can effectively be applied to other healthcare services, such as diagnostic imaging, respiratory therapy, physiological science, blood bank, and transfusion services. The use of this document facilitates the cooperation between medical laboratory and other healthcare services, assist in the exchange of information, and in the harmonization of their method and their process. So, in other words, you can also apply these documents to what? Even imaging, radiology services, respiratory therapy, physiological science, blood bank, transfusion, and the rest. Now, the comparability of patient examination results between medical laboratories, regardless of the city or country, is facilitated when the medical laboratory conform to this document. This is what I earlier explained. So, wherever country you're found, wherever city you are found, if your practice is being guided by this document, you can be recognized worldwide. When a laboratory seeks accreditation, it should select an accrediting body which operate in accordance to what the ISO 17011 and which takes into account the particular requirement for what medical laboratory. So when you want to seek accreditation, you have to look for an accrediting body. That accrediting body in one must be accredited in accordance to what ISO 17011 and they must also be member of the ILAC, International Laboratory of Accreditation System. Then that accrediting body must also put accounts of the requirement of the medical laboratory. So that is the vehicle of getting accreditation. I used to say it, maybe we're doing one of our slides, you say it. I say if somebody is going from, let's say, Lagos to Abuja, yes, and you want to go by road and you want to drive, it's better for you to use a 15-year-old boy who knows the road than to use a 50-year-old man who does not know the road. Now, why? Because of what? Direction and the know-how of where you are actually going. So accrediting body helps in accreditation. So we have a lot of accrediting bodies. So for those of us we know a lot, so you can type on the comment section some accrediting bodies that you know in the world, not only in Nigeria. So type, let me hear from us. What are the accrediting bodies we know? Okay, somebody say SANAS, yes. SANAS is South Africa National Accreditation System, yes. Which other one? Okay, UCAS, yes. Which other? Okay. Type. Please, let's be active. Is that all? Okay. SATCAS, okay. MLSCN, yes. ESLM. ESLM is not an accrediting body. NINAS, yes. Okay. Others. MLSCN, yes. More, yes. So we have so many. We have KENAS, we have A2AL, we have a whole lot. We have even in India we have I think QI. They are private. They are private. Yes, A2AL. Yes, that's for America. We also have some other private ones, even in other countries that are also accrediting bodies. So these are vehicles you can use for also accreditations, the accrediting bodies. Okay, so let's continue. So comparing between this document of the ISO 9001-2015 and the ISO 17025-2017 are in the Annex B. Comparison of the ISO 15189-2012 to 2022 is in the Annex C. So you will do yourself a great favor by reading through that document from cover to cover. This is essential. You can't finish this program without reading that document. Okay, let's look at the scope. The scope of this document, the document specifies the requirement for quality and competency in the medical laboratory. That we have already established. And if you read the document, you'll get to see that. Next, the document is applicable for medical laboratory in developing their management system and assessing their competence. It's also applicable for confirming and recognizing the competence of the medical laboratory by the laboratory user, regulatory authority, and accreditation body. So what's the difference between certification, licensure, and accreditation? Anybody want to help us? What's the difference between accreditation, certification, and licensure? So unmute your mic and tell us so that we can be fast. What's different? Is there a difference between accreditation, licensure, and certification? Okay, let me use an example. Okay, during the time of COVID in Nigeria, you hear they say what was this name of this? Uh Nigeria, what they call them, these people that were doing accreditation for COVID, in quotes. NCDC. Okay, in leg. Okay, so NCDC has accredited so and so lab to run COVID. How many of us heard about that such statement during, oh, COVID accredited lab? How many of us heard such statement during the time of COVID? Hello, talk to me. Unmute your mic, please.
Yes, we did, sir.
Okay. So now what is the difference between accreditation, licensure, and certification? Please, if you know, if there's difference, say if there is no difference, if there's no difference, end of discussion. If there's difference, please, can somebody just explain what's the difference between accreditation, certification, and licensure? Who is going to help us? If you are not talking, I'll call your name. I can
Okay,
see.
let me attempt, sir.
Okay. Tell us your name and attempt the question.
Okay, my name is Obiajulu
Okay.
Wariboko. So for certification, I would say it has to do with the personnel knowledge, skill, ability to deliver quality results. So
Okay.
you can be certified by WHO, maybe on a particular field or testing process, while accreditation has to do with the general processes of a testing site or a testing lab. And usually when you start accredited, it's the facility that takes the credits, not the individual, like the other one that if you are certified, it's you, the individual, that is certified.
Okay. So what about licensure?
Licensure, I think that one has to do with your annual, like the one in council, your annual license that you get.
Okay. Good. So
Oh,
if we say, okay, good thoughts. Okay, anybody wants to help us? If you say certification has to do with only individual. Okay. Have you not seen a packaging cert for a reagent or something? Say this thing has been certified for so and so stuff and the rest. So next person who is going to, I'm not discrediting what you are saying, but I'm just trying to just for us to just think. So next person who is helping us, difference between accreditation, certification, and licensure. Is there a difference? If there is, what's the difference? Okay. Okay, so to save time, I want every one of you to go home, read it, the difference between accreditation, certification, and licensure. But one thing you should know, accreditation can only be done by an accrediting body. So using the word NCDC, for example, accredited the lab for COVID testing is a wrong use of words. That word not so called. First and foremost, NEC is not an accrediting body. Am I communicating? So they cannot accredit a facility for a particular services. So there should be a word they are supposed to use there, or we are supposed to use there. So when you go home, read the three. When we come the next class tomorrow, I will ask us, then I will explain better. Is that well understood?
I think that word should be certified.
Let's go and read it. Read it up.
Okay.
And come tomorrow, we'll discuss it before the class. Okay, so the document is also applicable for the point of care testing that has been established. Then NV, international, national, or regional regulations or requirement can also apply specific topics to cover it in the standards. Now we are in 4.1, which is what? 4.1 addresses what? General what? Requirement. Clause 4 addresses the general requirement, as you can see on the screen. So 4.1 addresses what? Impartiality. 4.2 addresses what? Confidentiality. 4.21 addresses management of information, which is under confidentiality. So this is the way the clauses are written. 4.1 is a subclause of 4 points or 4, which is impartiality. Now, 4.2 is a subclause of 4, clause 4, which is confidentiality. Now, 4.2.1 is a subclause of what? 4.2. It's a subclause of 4.2, which is a subclause of 4 of clause 4. Is that well understood? Now, 4.3 is a subclause of what? Clause 4. Is that well understood? If you understand it, please type on the comment section. I just want to ensure that we understand what we are doing. So 4.1 talks about impartiality. 4.2 talks about confidentiality of information. 4.3 talks about requirements regarding patients. Now, this is what makes up what? The general what? Requirements. Okay. Now let's go. So 4.1 talks about impartiality. So when we talk about impartiality, what do we mean? Now somebody help us. When we talk about impartiality, what does it mean in your own understanding as a professional? Please unmute your mic and respond. What do you understand by the word impartiality?
I think personally, by not being biased in judgments.
Okay. By not being biased in judgment. Okay. Somebody else?
It could also mean the auditor or assessor not compromising on his judgment or on his verdicts, not compromising.
Okay. Thank you. So what is confidentiality? What is confidentiality? Okay. Please go ahead. I can see you raise up your hand.
Okay,
Inshallah.
confidentiality actually is talking about protecting the information of the patient from getting into the public space.
Fine. Thank
Hello,
you.
can you hear
Yes.
me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Did you hear what I just said, or should
Yes,
I
I did.
repeat
No,
myself?
I did. Yes, I did. So I'll
It's
just ask you.
protecting patient's information from getting to the public space.
Okay.
I,
So
I
mm,
also want to put in a different perspective.
okay.
Maintaining trust between two people. I think I'm said to be confidential.
Okay. Yeah. So when I asked the question, I didn't ask them what the confidentiality of patient information. I just said what is confidentiality? Normal English word. And other
Okay.
words. Yes, yes, that's what I asked. I said, what is confidentiality? So okay, let's continue. So we have seen the clause 4, impartiality, confidentiality, and requirement for regarding patient. Then there's 3 subclause under the confidentiality, which one is management of information, release of information, and personnel responsibility. So 4.1 talks about impartiality. Laboratory activities shall be undertaken impartially. That's why I asked what is impartiality. The laboratory shall be structured and managed to safeguard impartiality. Now, the laboratory management shall be committed to impartiality. The opposite of impartiality is what? Partiality.
Mhm.
Now, when you say somebody say, don't be partial, don't be sentimental, don't have favoritism. That's in layman's language. Now, the laboratory shall be responsible for impartiality of its laboratory activities and shall not allow commercial, financial, or other pressure to compromise what? Impartiality. The laboratory shall monitor its activities and its relationship to identify threats to its impartiality. This monitoring shall include relationship of its personnel. Now, there's possibility, for example, now somebody can come because I know someone. And remember what we are talking about impartiality, we're talking about the laboratory activities. So it has to be structured in such a way that there are no rules for impartiality. And anything that we make the lab to be impartial should be protected against. Things like commercial, financial pressure to compromise impartiality. Well, we have seen a lot of facilities where people write results that of a test that was not done. True of us, there are plenty in this part of the world. Now, a relationship that threatens the impartiality of the laboratory can be based on ownership, governance, management, personnel, shared resources, finance, contracts, marketing, including branding, and payment of sales commission or other inducements for the referral of the new laboratory user. Such relationships do not necessarily present the laboratory with a threat towards impartiality. A relationship that threatens the impartiality of the laboratory can be based on ownership, governance, management, personnel, shared resources, finance, contract, marketing, including branding, and payment of sales commission or other inducements for the referral of the new laboratory user, etc. Such relationships do not necessarily present the laboratory with a threat to impartiality. Now, if a threat to impartiality is identified, please note, the effect shall be eliminated or minimized so that the impartiality is not what? Compromised. The laboratory shall be able to demonstrate how it mitigates such threats. Now, please just follow. That is for 4.1. So anytime there is any form of what thing that threatens the impartiality of the lab, the management should put a structure to be able to mitigate such action. Number 2 talks about confidentiality. Management of information include 1, management of all patient information obtained or created during the performance of the laboratory process. Please just put your hand down. Just keep your hand down. I will ask question. Just listen and follow. Now, the management of all patient information obtained or created during the performance of the laboratory process. Now, there should be a management of patient information shall include privacy and confidentiality. So there should be privacy and there should be confidentiality. Now, the laboratory must, please, anytime you hear the word shall in the ISO, what does it mean? It means it is a must. It's a commandment, not a suggestion. The laboratory must inform the user and or the patient in advance of the information it intends to place in the public domain, except for information that the user or the patient makes publicly available or when agreed between the laboratory and the patient for the purpose of responding to complaints. All other information is considered proprietary information and shall be regarded as what? Confidentiality. So every patient information must be kept confidential. From patient name, data, the biodata, to the kind of test they are doing, to the kind of their result, everything has to what? Be confidential. I remember in one of the facilities I managed then. So this patient actually sent his urine sample. And I gave to, it was like we went to like a home service, not really a home service. He wanted to deliver the urine sample to the lab. So he sent the sample in a food pack. You know those styrofoam pack they use in wrapping rice in parties and the rest. He put it there, wrapped it, and gave it to the dispatch rider. The dispatch rider went to the lab straight and gave it. In presence of the dispatch rider, the phlebotomy opened it. And guess what the dispatch rider said? Oh, so now even urine the package that is not something better for inside this kind thing. And the client, the patient got to know, and it became an issue. Why? Because what? Patient confidentiality is being breached. Because you don't know what the patient is actually passing through. You don't know a lot of things about. And if there's a lot of information, maybe you don't even want the dispatch rider to even know what is happening. So the lab must treat every information. The information is not only just what is written. Information can even be a concern, can even be a source of information. Next, 4.2.2 talks about release of information. When the laboratory is required by law or authorized by contractual arrangement to release confidential information, the patient concerned shall be notified. Please, if you have any question, you can type it on the comment section or just keep it. After the class, you will have opportunity of asking your questions. Yeah. So when the laboratory is required by law or authorized by contractual arrangement to release the confidential information, the patient concerned shall be notified of the information released unless prohibited by law. So if there's an information that the lab needs to release to any government, you have to let the patient know. Information about the patient from a source other than the patient, example, a complaint regulator, shall be kept confidential by the lab. The identity of the source shall be kept confidential by the lab and shall not be shared with patient unless agreed by the what? The source. That has to do with release of information. 4.2.3 talks about personnel, including any committee member, contractors, personnel of external bodies, or individual with access to the laboratory information acting on the laboratory behalf shall keep confidential all information obtained or created during the performance of what? The laboratory activities. Let's say, for example, now, the contractor or someone who has an access, maybe to the LIs or to the books or to anything, or someone who comes to the lab to do one or two things. Could be a committee, could be a project, could be anything. They must keep what? All the information that is gotten confidential in the process of carrying out what? Their activities in that lab. Now, 4.3 talks about requirements for regarding what? Patients. Now, laboratory management shall ensure that the patient well-being, safety, and rights are the primary consideration. Now, the laboratory shall establish and implement the following process. Now, anytime you hear establish and implement, it means that you must have a documented procedure for addressing that. And there must be a proof of how it is being implemented. Please take note of that. When they say the laboratory shall establish, it means that there should be a documented what? Procedure for that requirement. And if the right implements, you must show an evidence of how it was carried out. Am I communicating? Please, if you can hear me loud and clear and it's well understood, please type on the comment section. So to establish means to have a documented procedure for a process. To implement is to show an evidence of when it is being carried out. Okay, thank you. So, opportunity for patient and laboratory users to provide helpful information to aid the laboratory in selection of the examination method and interpretation of the examination results. So, there should be opportunity for patient and laboratory user. Now, because everybody that patronize the lab, you're either a patient or what? You're a laboratory what? User. You must provide them with helpful information in the lab to help them to know the method at which this test was done, to also know the interpretation of the test results. There should be provision of patient and user with publicly available information about the examination process, including the cost when applicable and when to expect the result. So a patient comes in, it should be a document that shows what the turnaround time of every test, including the test that is not being done by your lab, or maybe you are referring. You should have what that is to when to expect the result. Because when the patient comes in, he gives you his money, he gives you his sample. At the end of the day, the only thing the lab gives the patient back is what? His result, information. So there should be a periodic review of the test offered by the lab to ensure that they are clinically appropriate and what? Necessary. When appropriate, disclosure of patient, user, and any other relevant person of incident and results or could have resulted in patient harm and record of action taken to mitigate those harm. So let me take one for example. They said an opportunity for patient and laboratory user. Okay, 2, provision of patient and user with public information about the examination process, including the cost when applicable and when to expect the result. To fulfill this second point, you need to have a a document that addresses your turnaround time. And you have to communicate it to the patient. Okay. Now, treat patient sample or remain with due care and respect. Patient sample and remains of those samples with due care and respect. So there should be a document or an SOP showing your patient, your sample management. That is how you can be able to, how you can be able to establish what a documented procedure for patient sample management. There should be a documented procedure for obtaining informed consent when required. Clearly tests like maybe HIV testing, genetic testing. There should be proof. For one, you need to have the document that address how you collect the informed consent of that patient. You need to also have a document that shows where it is being implemented, where the patient signed or where the patient put a consent to say he or she has consented to that test, where required, when required. And the general requisition form, the standard general requisition form, can also serve as that. When the patient signs there, it shows that the patient has given a consent for you to go ahead with that test. Ensuring the ongoing availability and integrity of the retained patient sample and record in the event of the closure, acquisition, or merger of the laboratory. Making relevant information available to a patient and any other healthcare service provider at the request of the patient or the request of the healthcare provider acting on their behalf. So one of the ways to address this is to have a lab book, a handbook. If you have a handbook can contain all this information. Make relevant information available to the patient or any other healthcare service provider at the request of the patient or the request of the healthcare provider acting on their behalf. Uphold the right of the patient to care that is free from discrimination. Now, these are some of the document or process system to help to implement this clause that we just read. 1. SOP. Policy document that addresses confidentiality, which must be signed by every personnel, even assessor when they come for audit. So you need to have an SOP and a policy that addresses what confidentiality, which must be signed by every personnel or even assessor when they come for audit, if applicable by organization. You should have a procedure for mitigating impartiality identified. Next, you need a good laboratory information management system that will help to manage the laboratory process from the pre-analytical to the post-analytical, end-to-end of the process. It could be paper-based, it could be electronic-based. But the good thing about it is that if you have a good electronic-based LIS, you are going to enjoy that because you can keep patient record information end-to-end, and people cannot easily have access to it. Because everyone that has access to it on the back end of the IT, they can have a trail of those people who have an access to it. And those is one of the good things about what a good laboratory information management system. Every lab that really want to ensure that their QMS is their documentation is being put well, you should have a good LIS or an LIMS. And if you want one, why not? We could provide such services to you. Next, manual for sample processing. You should have a manual for sample processing, manual for handling patient sample storage, and discarding of samples. Could be an SOP, could be a manual. So some organization can put it like pre-analytical manual. So under that pre-analytical manual, there are subsections that talks about manual for sample processing, aspect that talks about handling of patient sample, aspect that talks about sample storage, how long do you store your sample, each department, for what, at what temperature, everything, how do you discard your samples, etc. You should have things like pre-analytical manuals and SOPs, patient identification SOPs, SOP on how to identify your patient, patient consent forms, standard requisition forms. A lot of us in our labs, we don't have standard requisition forms. We just have something like treatment sheet. Somebody will just write and John Paul EUC arrow. Those are not standard requisition form. But some people can even use their jotter, their notepad. Just write John Paul, AD. AD is adult. Then F is female. Cross it. Write EUC arrow. And you sign. That is not a standard requisition form. It could be electronically, it could be manually. But a good standard requisition form should have what? The name, the age, or the date of birth. And if you are using age, what will be the age of the patient? If a patient in, let me ask you, if a patient in, okay, let's say his birthday was 30th of December and he was 20 years old, and the patient is coming November 2025. So what is the age of the patient when you are feeling?
20.
20. Yeah, the last birthday is the age of the patient. Now, standard acquisition form now should have what? Sex. We will no longer use gender because the world is actually changing. Because people have gender has now become orientation. What people have up their upstairs, but sex is what they have downstairs, and that so we prefer now to use what sex than gender. Because if you use gender, somebody can tell you that it's a male, and actually sex is actually female and the rest. So you should have the name, the referring doctor, the referring organization, space for clinical information, the test to be done, the name of the person receiving the sample, the name of the person collecting the sample, the time the sample was collected, the dates at which the sample was collected. If possible, you can also have a space to capture the numbers of tubes or sample that was collected. Is it urine? Is it stool? Okay, if it is even sample, is it one SST, one EDTA, one lithium heparin? You can have all those things. Who collected the sample, when it was collected, and the signature of the patient. All these are many more forms what the standard acquisition form should look like. Should have patient handbook or information book. Then access to tests being done. So these are documents that will help you or can help the lab to address these four clause 4, sorry. Now, please take note of this. This is one of the shortest requirements. We have impartiality, confidentiality, management of information, release of information, personnel responsibility, the requirement for regarding patients. So I've addressed some of these systems that you need to put in place to implement these clauses. Okay. Any question? Question, please.
Question.
Yes.
When you were talking about the dispatch rider the other time, that he brought the patient sample in a food pack container like the one used in party, and they had to open it up and he discovered what was inside. And then you are mentioning that is breach of confidentiality on the part of the patient. And my question is, I'm sure you are not expecting that sample to be open after the dispatch rider must have left, because part of confirming pre-analytical quality control is
Can you just hold
to
on?
check.
Just hold on, please. Please hold on. Just hold on a minute.
Okay.
Just hold on, please. Please hold on.